how to self-study an IB subject. A lot of you are stuck with either a terrible teacher or a person that just can't teach and doesn't know what he's doing. In either of these cases, you're going to need to self-study, so to speak, the subject yourself. So this video isn't a way to study a subject that isn't offered by your school. To do that, you should check out this website called Pomoja Online and try to get them to work with your school. But this is for people who need to literally self-study a subject by themselves. And really, to study anything, you need to know what to study, you're going to need to know how to study it, and you're going to need to apply it. And especially with the IB, you have a ton of coursework. I'm going to show you how it's not only possible to do it, but it's going to be, you can get really, really high marks studying yourself instead of just relying on a bad teacher. So the first thing we need to do is what to study. How do you even know what we're supposed to look at? So the first thing, and the most important thing, which you've probably heard of before, are syllabus statements. Syllabus statements are basically all the objectives of learning the course. It's a list of every single thing you need to know. Think of this like a big list of check marks that you need to tick off. Every single thing in every single syllabus statement you need to know. The most important thing about syllabus statements is that they show you both, not only the content, but more importantly, the depth of what you need to know. And I'll give you an example. For example, if, let's just say for the subject of biology, a question came out, explain photosynthesis. Right now, a regular biology answer from any, you look at a YouTube video, you learn what photosynthesis is, and you write down an answer. You could get 6 out of 10. You'd have a pretty good overview. You'd have some good concepts down, but you're not really specific to the IB syllabus, right? You need to be really, really specific if you want to get good marks. So to do that, you need to use certain IB specific terms. Maybe over here they want you to mention a protein, or maybe an enzyme, or maybe a specific example. So all these things, these specific aspects, get you higher marks. Again, it's not that you won't get marks with just regular explanations, but the syllabus statements show you the depth, the specificity of your answers and what you need to include in your exam, and that's really, really important, and that's going to get you the top. That's going to get you top marks. The second thing you're going to need to do is, so you may be thinking, well, obviously you need to use a textbook, but the point I'm trying to make is that you need to use the right textbook. Okay, because the wrong textbook can really, really mess you over. And the reason for this is that, okay, the syllabus tells you what you need to know, but it doesn't give you the content. You need to use a textbook. And for the IB, there are basically 3 big players. There's the Oxford, Pearson, and Cambridge textbooks. And even if they're all made, for the IB, so they say, you may say, I'll just follow what my school is using. You shouldn't do that, because if your school is using a crap textbook, you're going to get crap marks. And just because a textbook says that they cover everything doesn't mean it covers everything. Some textbooks. Here's the thing. Just because a textbook says that it covers everything doesn't mean it covers everything. For business management, I used Paul Huang and the Oxford textbook. For bio, I used Oxford, Pearson. For eco, Oxford, Cambridge. And did I literally read all those books? No, but I used certain parts of both books to really understand the syllabus. Right? For example, the Pearson bio book, it was great for explanations, phenomenal, but it was just not specific enough for the IB exams. For example, they literally list out a syllabus statement that they say they're going to explain, but they wouldn't explain it. They'll just give like a small line to explain it, and that's not enough. So I really count that as not being explained at all, not being dealt with, and that's really bad. So I would use the Pearson textbook for a very good explanation of the general concepts, but then I'd go to the Oxford textbook for a lot of specific details. So that's basically how I would study bio. For another example is econ, and you'll see this a lot. Some textbooks literally have a syllabus statement, and then they have the content, syllabus statement, content, syllabus statement, content. And you may think this is good because they're really conforming the syllabus, and yeah, that's good. But you have to understand that a good explanation should come, naturally. It shouldn't be forced, like this is the syllabus statement, this is the content. That's like presenting just really, really thorough notes. A good explanation should bring out the syllabus statements from an explanation. That's at least the way I feel. So that's kind of the way, that's one of the reasons I really didn't like the HL economics book by Ellie Trigakes, but I really loved it for maths, for the econ maths part. So I used purely the econ maths part from Ellie Trigakes because the Oxford book wouldn't have enough detail. On the other hand, the Oxford book wasn't perfect for econ because, for example, in terms of content, there was one part where they explained all 3 levels of price discrimination when the syllabus just needed them to explain one. Ellie Gates explained only one, and this book didn't have really good math. Ellie Gates had good math, but this book was really confusing. But this book was really good at explanations. You see how each book has their pluses and minuses, and it's your job to kind of figure out, according to the syllabus, which book is good for which. Now, I don't want to bash on Oxford so much because they make some great textbooks. Honestly, like the economics textbooks was phenomenal. I don't want to bash on Pearson too much also because I needed them for biology. And I don't want to bash on Cambridge too much because the Ellie Gates books was really important for my third paper in econ math. Basically, every single thing has its pluses and minuses, and you need to figure that out. So again, don't just follow the textbook that your school is using. Follow what works for you and follow what's mostly in line with the syllabus. That's very important. The third thing you need to know is obviously the use of past papers. And I've heard this argument before where people don't want to use past papers too earlier on because they don't want to waste, so to speak, the past papers. But the cool thing, I like to think of past papers as essentially a summary of all the main points of the syllabus, right? Certain points in the syllabus are obviously more important than other points. For example, this was one whole, this was all syllabus, but just a small portion of a topic kept on coming up in past exams. So obviously, when you recognize that these things keep on bubbling up in the exam, when you learn the content from your textbook, you're going to remember, okay, this was, very, very prominent throughout a lot of the exam papers, and you're going to pay more attention to that. And over time, as you solidify these main concepts, because you're recognizing all these main concepts from the past papers mark scheme, you're going to be very, very strong in a lot of the major components of whatever subject you're looking at. So this works really well for subjects like biochem, for a lot of the long answer subjects like economics, English. What I'd recommend you to do is look at model answers online, and you can find a lot of them. The main thing is you have to look at past paper questions because they are gonna essentially show you, they're gonna show you what you need to concentrate on. The next thing also, in terms of questions, a lot of books have practice questions, and all the books that I use, I never did the practice questions because they were so terrible, aside from math. So here, I did my math SL textbook, and I basically did I did hundreds of questions from that textbook, and out of those questions, maybe only 20% prepared me for the exam. The reason for, because the past paper and the textbook questions are extremely different, and the past paper questions are going to be the one to prepare you for the exam. So if you spend all your time doing your textbook questions, it's not going to really help. And thank God I learned my lesson from that, because in the Oxford IB textbook, there were a ton of database questions that I couldn't do at all. I found it really confusing, and I thought I was going to fail because of that. But thank God I switched to practicing a lot of my past paper database questions, and I just started, flying through these section A of my biology paper too. So again, don't rely on your textbook paper questions. Always look at your past paper questions. Don't think you're going to waste them. Most likely in 4 months, you're going to, forget everything that forget everything in the paper. So don't think you're going to waste them. Do your past papers as frequently as possible. You'll be so thankful when you're prepared, aside from your friends, at the end of the course. And the last thing I want to talk about is something that I find is a very big component. What do you mean I find? It is a really big component, is your coursework. So you have your IA, you have your EE, right? You have your FOA, you have 1,000 different 3-letter things and 2-letter things. Anyway, for your coursework, if you don't have a good teacher that can guide you in it, it poses a big problem. So you need to find a lot of external sources to get this, fixed. So what I'd recommend is to get model IAs and EEs. So what I find is that a lot of students that get near perfect scores on their coursework post them online, right? But more specifically, they post them on a website called ibsurvival.com, and you've probably heard of it. But a lot of them, they index all these internal assessments of previously really successful students. And what I recommend is that you download as many of them as you want, and suddenly you'll find certain patterns in all of these assessments that really help you, that you can see, okay, all these successful assessments had these components in them, and I'm going to include that component in my IA. Also, if you go on the IB website, they have like 12 different sample internal assessments with commentary on each of them. So if you go through all of them and you really see what the IB likes, what the IB doesn't like, that can really help you as well. So ibsurvival.com is extremely important if you don't have a good guide for somebody to help you with your IA and your EE. The second thing I'd recommend to do is reach out to other IB teachers. So it's really stupid. Sometimes what I would do is I would pose as an IB teacher, and I would email another IB teacher saying, I'm new to the program. as an experienced teacher, the student has come to me with this problem. What do you recommend? And those people would, they would respond back to me. And that worked for some time, but that was kind of like unstable. What I found that really worked is I started emailing teachers as a student. And I said, I don't have a really good teacher. Do you mind helping me? And I would do this for business, a couple other subjects, and some teachers were just so great. Shout out to Tim Woods, who really helped me for my business IA. I asked quite a bit of questions to him, and he always responded. Even though it weren't long questions, but just the fact that you're helping someone, that's a really big thing. I think there's this other teacher called Von Bargen, and that's her name, and she has this website called Biology for Life. That has some really good IA explanations. She has a huge checklist which you can go through that lists out every single thing you need to put in your IA. So that's really, really important. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that don't limit yourself to only YouTube teachers, and don't limit yourself to only your own teachers. There are tons of other teachers online that are preparing things for their classroom, and their emails displayed. And if you can reach out to these teachers, more than likely they're willing to help. What you need to study, we use this by the syllabus statements. How will you study? By multiple textbooks, right? Pluses and minuses. And how you're going to apply that, you use past papers and coursework. You go on IB Survival and fake other teachers now. You go on IB Survival and you email other teachers and just hoping that they will help you. So hopefully that helped. The only thing I think these tips won't help is for the languages, because the syllabus is really geared towards the coursework and the textbooks are really vague. So I don't think that will help that much, but past papers always help. So again, hopefully, this helped you. I'm not bringing anything new, but hopefully I've kind of showed you how all these components link together and for your self-study. So hopefully that all goes well. Comment if you have any resources that other people can use. And yeah, have fun.